Okay, thank you very much. With that, I would like to close this part, and at least we would have a short wrap-up from another perspective again. And I would like to invite Georgi Pataki and Horst Korn together with me on the plenary. Actually, I have to explain this. We wanted to have also a little bit of a longer wrap-up roundtable here, and the roundtable is now a little bit smaller since all our persons who wanted to join us were either becoming ill, are stuck in the London fog, or had some other very good reasons of unfortunately not joining us today. So first of all, we would nonetheless like to have a little bit of reframing or recap on the issue of how we can actually look at a NoK also from a requester's perspective. And our valued colleagues here up on the table are more or less taking up the global perspective, in the sense that Georgi Pataki is a member of the multidisciplinary expert panel of the IPBES. So, and Horst Korn here from the Federal Agency of Nature Conservation in Germany has been working with the CBD for quite a while, I think for 20 years, 30 years. And so we would like to start with that global perspective first, and invite them to have their idea on their reflection on how such a regional approach like the NoK could actually help also on that global level. But then I would really like everybody from you, from a more country perspective, especially those who are also more on the requester or user side of such a network, to also come up with your ideas and reflections from the national perspective. But first of all, maybe to start with Georgi, from the IPBES perspective, what do you think how such regional networks of knowledge could actually support the work that is now of course still under planning basically in IPBES, and how we can deal with that?
Thanks a lot for the opportunity to share my view on this knowledge, network of knowledge, and how it can relate to IPBES. Although IPBES is just in these days struggling to produce and finalize their first documents, which was under a kind of long stakeholder consultation process, and submitting it to the next plenary, which is going to happen in early December in Turkey, where it will turn out whether the government representatives will support what was going on till now under the IPBES. And definitely my first statement or claim can be that we really need, as IPBES multidisciplinary expert panel members, this kind of support which regional network of knowledges can provide us, because the huge issue coming issue will be for IPBES that how it can involve the relevant experts and different types of knowledge holders into their work in the future. As you might know, we are just planning how IPBES works. So we are an interim multidisciplinary expert panel for 2 years, which 1 year is now ending. So we are designing how it will work, what will be the operational procedures. But definitely the real work will maybe start next year sometime, but after we resign, definitely. So the huge issue will be that, is there anything out there which we can tap and make our life easier, and get to those knowledge holders who can produce the reports, who can contribute to the reports which IPBES will or supposed to come up with. So I think if there is, and this is my experience coming from Eastern Europe especially, that there is no networks, or there are different networks, but they are not really collaborating, communicating, and they are very easily accessible, or not easily accessible. And I would really support if there is some kind of network of networks which tries to collect or tries to reach out to those different networks. Although I should say that there is still this issue from the IPBS perspective that, as I said, I am representing Eastern Europe. Under IPBS, Europe is divided. Western Europe is belonging together with North America, US, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand in one UN region, and Eastern Europe is another region from Hungary, Czech Republic till Tajikistan. So it's an interesting regional division, which means that there is no such thing as a European perspective, at least involved, which of course kind of debated whether this is a good situation or not, but this is how, because of this is a UN initiative, it should abide to the UN rules. Which I would say that, and this is of course a very particular perspective of mine, but I would say that in a sense this gives some opportunity for some countries who are involved in Eastern Europe to express a much heavier influence on the process. Within a pan-European perspective, this is my experience, and maybe this is a bit provocative, but definitely in a pan-European perspective, always Eastern Europe is lagging behind. Behind Western Europe, and Western Europe sets the stage and the agenda, and Eastern Europe is a bit, due to resources, due to the collaborative or not partnership-like culture in Eastern Europe. So I think in this sense, Eastern Europe is now privileged in the IPBS, which has advantages and might have disadvantages as well. So that's, I think, the first statement, and I think I will let my colleague talk next, that definitely we are very keen on involving this kind of networks, using their support, because as far as I understand, my job is really to help to kind of support these networks to be born if they are not there, or if there are networks to be involved. So this is how I understand my job, but I cannot generalize that all IPBS members understand in the same way.
Thanks a lot, Georgi. Just maybe a short reminder, we just recently had in July a joint pan-European stakeholder meeting on IPBES where we actually discussed these issues, and of course it was very clear that actually in IPBES we should look at it from a biogeographical rather than from a political perspective, and this of course is a challenge when it comes to uniting, well, Eastern and Western European views on that then. So coming back to the other big international process, the CBD, which is of course also in a implementation mode now in implementing its 2020 biodiversity targets. And Horst, we have just seen that they are also reshuffling their work in terms of scientific issues when it comes to the subster and so on. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, on how this might link up to the European perspective.
Well, let me start on a little bit on another end. Just when I look at national, European, global science policy interfaces, then I see that the problems are the same at all levels. And I think they have to be clear, also very, very evident from the case studies presented. And I could phrase it in two ways. On one hand, I'm happy that you identified the same problems that I have been, encountered the same problems that I'm trying to cope with for the last 20 years. Because this way, I'm sure that I haven't overlooked something very vital. On the other hand, it's not really the breakthrough that we need. It's a confirmation of the problems that we all face. That is, first of all, if we want to get people involved in the assessment, it's always a shortage of the really good people and the ones we need. They are short of time, and all the ones that really have time, we don't really need, I think. So it's it's really how to attract these people. That points and this was also mentioned, to the reward system and to the incentives that can be given to that people, so to the prestige that a body has, because these reward systems have to be mainly non-monetary. If we start off with paying people, then we will quickly be in the millions and it will not be able to do anything there. Then it's the whole range of dichotomy between the science and the policy, and we have seen it very clearly with Isabel, with the credibility issue. A lot of scientists are not willing to publish sort of work in progress or what they think needs to be refined or certified. With Isabel, it was the map that had some gaps, and the scientists said, no, we don't want to publish it yet, but maybe for decision making or for further development of policy, this is already enough because it would hint into a certain direction, even if the output has some gaps, which is also stating that in policy, you rather need an advice that is approximately right at the right time. There's also an issue of timing, what was mentioned, because policy processes are going on, and if you want to feed or influence these policy processes, you have to really look at the timelines. Then it was already touched on the whole issue of great literature, indigenous and local knowledge. In the political arena, very high on the agenda, like in IPES. Just to give you a hint, we just have done or facilitated a workshop facilitated for the indigenous peoples and local communities with other stakeholders to think about how to do it and how to get their knowledge fed into the process. I can provide you with a workshop report. It's aimed at the IPES plenary, but I think it could well also be valuable for this. And now coming, how to attract the good contributors. I think very, very important is to attract a few champions. And if you have a few big shots on the list, the other will come. So it's very critical that a few people really identify really the big shots and try to get them on board, and then the rest is much easier, instead of just sending around messages who wants to contribute. But now, going on the international scene and how this relates to the CBD. Well, we have since 20 years the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, the SABSTA and the CBD. It was, I think, the basic idea behind when this was created more than 20 years ago with the Biodiversity Convention to have a scientific advisory body. But it turned out that this advisory body was not independent. So, because we had to follow the rules of the United Nations, or some rules of where if you don't have any agreement, nothing happens. So you have to have consensus. And to negotiate science to consensus is killing science. So then, for many, many years, there was a request first to transfer SABSTA back into a really scientific body. This could not be done, so then the additional or new body, IPES, was created as now the body that should have that function. And now that we have IPES commissioning this independent scientific, assessments, suddenly CBD thinks that they can also do it. And now after 20 years, they start to make the SABSTA more scientific, which I think is not really helpful and not very useful. And we will have to see, the SABSTA is going to take part, to be in Montreal in the next month, and we will see how this is going to work and if we get it back to its normal operation, which is preparation of the Conference of the Parties, which they do a good job in, and they should not too much intermingle and take up the IPBES role which we now have. Also, the political boundaries are not very useful of the United Nations. And concerning a European body, as it is seen, it may be the only regional body that is established in the near future. Maybe North America will do something similar, but the true regional body will only be Europe. And on the global scale, we have to be a little bit stepping back. I mean, if we as Europe push too much forward, the others will shy away, because Europe has so much capacity, even if individual countries are lack of capacity. But in comparison to the other regions of the world, is Europe so much capacity that in reality we would not even need them to do a good assessment. But then again, you have the whole issue of stakeholder involvement, of buy-in, and so on. So we, by that, if in the next negotiations Europe will be stepping a little bit back and not pushing so much, you have to understand this. This is for political reason, because otherwise it will kill the process. That for now.
Thank you very much. So very detailed input from the global perspective from our two panelists here. I would like to open the floor with two occasions for you. First of all, I would like to invite you, as I said, those of you who have a more national perspective and want to bring in some more reflections on how a European body or a European mechanism like this network of knowledge could also help and serve the national or even local perspective. If you have any ideas on additions on that from your perspective, either from a research side or from a practitioner's and requester side, or of course, if you want to add on or discuss a little bit more the implications of the link between the regional European level to the global level, here with our panelists, of course, you can also ask some questions to our panelists if you want to. So the floor is open. Any additions from the national perspective you would like to add? Christoph.
Sorry, not from the national perspective, but I would have like to ask the question to Horst. I think this observation is very true, very valuable, that Europe should not push the regional approach for IPBES too much, because that maybe create some skeptical approach in other regions. But on the other hand, this may be a question of the political the dynamic of the process. But on the other hand, I learned in the IPBES creation process over the last couple of years that it is very important to stimulate the discussions on how such an institution should look like by specific experiences. So what did you say, not from the political side, but from the self-organization of science? If you go forward in a way that we say, of course, in Europe, such a regional approach is necessary, it's doable, it's feasible. On the other hand, of course, some southern countries and southern regions, African regions, South Asia, maybe also Latin America, need some support, they need capacity building, they're asking for the capacity building. Could you imagine that such an NoK mechanism in Europe could also play a role in the capacity building for a regional approach in other regions of the world?
Yeah, first of all, I think we should establish this regional network of knowledge, but with a major target, our European focus and our European problems. And not so much trying to use that body, if it gets established, as a direct link or a regional working body for the IPBES. I think it will we will get the balance in IPES completely out of scale, and the other one may shy away. Or the problem, but this is again a political question, if we are very strong on this European network of knowledge, then the other ones want to have one too. And who's going to pay for that? So it will again draw on other resources, on the limited resources. They may be spent somewhere else, maybe on the general IPES, on the global IPES more important. Then, to follow up on what I just said, what I said, Europe is too strong, and he also mentioned the regional balance. In former United Nations bodies, we had very often, we have 5 UN regions or 3 UN regions in developing countries. This is Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Then we have Central and Eastern European countries, which is a former Eastern Bloc, which has still not, many of these countries are already part of the European Union, but it has not been solved on the UN scale. They're still the old group. And the rest is Western Europe and others group. Very bizarre thing. That is the former Western Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand. And as in the moment, we still work by these groups in the IPES, and before it was that any body was basically was consisted of half people from northern countries, means industrialized countries, and half from developing countries. The developing countries don't buy that anymore, especially now with China, India, Brazil, South America, South Africa, Argentina, Mexico, these big countries. They want their own rights. So what happens now is that Europe, and not only Europe, it's Europe and others, it means North America and Australia, New Zealand, we will only have 20% of the share. And since we also always, as now speaking from the European Union, the old European Union perspective, Western Europe, since we have to share with North America and Australia and New Zealand, we will have only 10% of the whole input. That means even if we, later on, if the assessments are made, this will be amount of persons being involved in these assessments. So that's why I said, even if we had the capacity, and there may be the most prominent persons from Europe will not make it in, but there may be PhD students from Central Africa or others, or master's degrees people from other regions of the world, they will make it in. So there will be an unbalance in also capacity, and then, but they can learn to do it by learning by doing. And this is also the capacity building, and they have to get involved.
Yeah, so the capacity building would be the thing. So.
If I may add to this issue, I do think that and I do have a perspective that Europe and in this sense the developed part of the world has a special and elevated responsibility, and that might mean that it should accept this kind of underrepresentation as well, because it historically enjoyed a lot from this biosphere, and it's time to give it back, and time to give others the opportunity to make their share, make their contribution, develop their knowledge. Because I believe if they are doing it, they can catch up. But if we are dominating, as we did it historically, then they cannot catch up. So that's why I also express this Eastern European perspective in a sense, which is just in the sense that I can sense even in the doing science and being at the MAP meetings that how inequality already is built into the system because of the differences between the background countries and how they support their MAP members, how they support the whole process. So these injustices are already into this system, institutionalized, and that's why I think we have, who are coming from more well-to-do countries, so our background is much better. Like myself, I'm included as Hungarian, compared to another Eastern European country. So I take my responsibility as doing more work for involving others than, for example, Hungarians, those who are not involved yet. So I think we have to have, at least I promote this mindset, that we, and in this sense I think Christoph's question, I would see that if we contribute to the budget, our governments contribute to the IPBS budget, then it means that it's a big budget and it can be reallocated if we have our own resources to build up a European network of knowledge, then maybe IPBS can use the capacity building for other regions, and which we provided maybe. So I would say that this is very much in line what I think IPBS should go, although definitely there's still these unresolved and maybe never resolved questions how to represent. If I might open up or return to, for me, a very important question, and also Horst raised it, it is the question of whose knowledge we are talking about and who are the knowledge holders. And I would really emphasize this issue that in IPBS, this is a core issue to go beyond this scientific mindset, that science is the only knowledge holder and scientists are the only knowledge holders. So I think in some of the presentations, it was very much framed sometimes in a very broad way, sometimes in a very narrow way. IPBS is really pushing other types of knowledges and seeking the way how to involve other types of knowledge. So as myself a researcher, I should take another responsibility on to reach out those knowledge holders who we typically don't reach out in our daily activities or our routine activities, and we don't have the institutionalized mechanism for reaching out to them so much, as it's quite easy for me to come these kind of workshops, but other knowledge holders might not be here. So I would think that this topic, whose knowledge counts, and even what is science? What is the contribution to our knowledge base? Only this narrow scientific kind of, and I raise this issue that what is science because sometimes I'm coming from economics, which is very proud to be mathematical science. So we think that, oh, there are the social scientists who are not so lagging behind. But this is a huge issue. When we talk about science, we usually talk about a natural science point of view, and not including anthropological knowledge, ethnographical knowledge. And we think that if we quantify and measure something, then it is a higher level of knowledge. So I would, again, emphasize that my view is a more inclusive view. And IPBS is also going for this, although the interim situation for the interim multidisciplinary expert members panel is very bad, because out of the 25, 23 is natural science-based, 2 economists, including myself, and no one from social science. I don't talk about the gender balance, which is also horrible. So I think we exclude, or we can include, how we define the knowledge holders, how we think what is science and things. So these issues are implicitly into the institutionalized system, so we should explicitly raise it, tackle it, and deal with it.
Thank you very much. So, any other comments from the audience, not only on IPBS and the perspectives that we had here, but also on the European or national perspective, maybe? Anything else you want to add from that perspective in terms of also the different knowledge forms, which I think we found as one of the main challenges in the project also as well, to be honest. So, any raise of hands? Anything from the web stream? Or they went home already, probably. Nothing else. You all want to go for dinner, which would be fine as well. Yeah. So, in that case, I would close the session. We have a wonderful dinner where you can discuss all these things and bring it back tomorrow. But before you leave, please be aware of my housekeeping issues now. But first of all, maybe a hand for Georgi and Horst for joining us here. So, the housekeeping. As you know, we have, since the public transport is so messy in Berlin right now, we have organized 2 buses to bring us to the dinner at the Natural History Museum, and there you will have also a guided tour. What is very important, those of you who have arrived with luggage and who want to be brought with the luggage to the hotels after the dinner, please take the first bus. Take bus number 1, because there you can leave your luggage in and take that bus back, which is called, you will read Holiday Reisen on it, so holiday travel in German. It's on the bus. So please bring your luggage to that bus. There you can leave it during dinner, and then the buses who will bring us back at 10:30 after the dinner will also go along the hotels that have been on our official list. Not every hotel in Berlin, but only these few. So, those who have luggage, please take bus number 1. And this bus will leave at 6:20, so in half an hour sharp outside the building, probably on the other side of the street, but there will be Heidi who will be looking into that. She will be with you in bus number 1. So it's leaving sharp at 6:20, so please be there with your luggage. And then there will be a second bus also going then right afterwards. Then please be reminded of the pie exercise that Heidi has showed to you. Please take it with you or leave it at the reception desk today already, ideally, or do it overnight so that we have it tomorrow morning. Also, there are colored pens if you need them, by the way, at the reception. And with that, I'd like to close this session, but first of all, I would like to thank our web streaming team over there who did an excellent job, because we had quite some feedback, which was really, really good from outside. And also, of course, the whole team around, the facilitators and so on. And tomorrow we will go into the even more challenging part on talking about the challenges and especially the solutions for the network of knowledge. So thank you very much. Have a nice dinner. We will meet at the Dinosaur.